Good morning. Welcome to the morning meeting and the first day of the rest of your life. Last night was a late one as President Trump shattered all records, giving the longest Day of the Union type speech in American history, at least since the clock was invented. Thank you for joining. Sean, Dan, and I will run through the daybook the way they do at the television network news divisions. Then we'll kick around what we think it all means with a forward-looking posture, always with peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace to all, including Congressman Green. And then we'd love your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand. We'd love to get you into the conversation. If this sounds a bit rote, well, sure, do this same speech every day. It's going to sound a little rote. Let's shake it up a little bit. Hey, y'all, thanks for coming. If you're on YouTube or X, don't raise your hand. If you go in the chat, no smack, blah, blah, blah. All right, gentlemen. Sean, just everybody wants to know the data. What time did you go to sleep? What time did you get up?
I watched Alyssa Slotkin in bed. I was on, and then so I watched her. And as soon as she said her last word, I off. I was all tucked in, ready to go. And then I had to be up early for mass this morning. It's Ash Wednesday. Because
I'm looking for two data points, Sean.
I know, but I'm trying to. So 11:30. I lost track. Whatever her last word was, I wasn't looking at a clock. Blue light. Okay. And then I was up at 6:08.
Okay, Dan.
I went to bed about 1 a.m., had trouble calming down, and then got up about 5:30, took a nice walk with the dog. New day.
All right. Here's the schedule.
Mark, whoa, you don't get off scot-free.
1 a.m., 3 a.m.
Nice.
What?
Yeah. That's why I look.
Yeah, not really that refreshed.
I asked the question. So everybody has an understanding of why I looked the way I looked. All right, here we go.
I think you look pretty good for 2 hours.
It's the sweater. The president currently has no public events today. He's having a private meeting with folks from the Freedom Caucus to continue to help whip with Speaker Johnson the votes necessary to pass a series of measures that are going to have to be passed over the next few weeks in order to avoid a government shutdown, a breach of the debt ceiling, move reconciliation down the railroad tracks. Lots going on, but the president is having these meetings, and something's going to happen on tariffs today. Something probably happen in Ukraine. Maybe I'll have a public event, but as of now, he doesn't. The White House press secretary briefs at 1 p.m.
The tariff thing is going to be big. I think you're going to see an announcement on the Canada, Mexico, what they've done on fentanyl.
Although Lutnick backed off a little bit compared to what he said yesterday on CNBC or Fox Business. Today on Bloomberg, he backed off a little bit, and just is all part of the good cop, bad cop thing. But I agree with you. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, though, is it's not good cop, bad cop.
He just wanted that to be in all the commentary all night, that this may be coming off, right? So everyone's like, oh, they're
well, no, I want you guys, just so for the record.
Such a shiny red ball.
The April 2nd 301 review that he's doing in the weeds dirt, that's going to be legit real. So these temporary ones that have to do with fentanyl, but when he does the 301 review that comes out April 2nd that he mentioned last night, I would prepare for some serious economic impact on that one.
All right, let's get back to the day book. We'll get back to the tariffs too. Put up the White House schedule today. Our daily analysis from Special White House Correspondents Association student correspondent Sean Spicer. Sean, who do you see on the poll today that catches your eye?
Well, News Nation, proud to see them being the secondary TV correspondent, proud to be a contributor there. The new media in town pool is the American Conservative, founded by, among others, Pat Buchanan, and has sort of got fame in recent history because J.D. Vance gives them credit for his hillbilly elegy story getting out because of an interview with them.
Who's the White House correspondent for the American Conservative?
I knew you were going there, and I don't. I was trying to rack my brain. It probably is obvious.
Unless they throw on a public event, being in the pool today is not such a great deal because they're not going to get to cover anything, but they probably will. 3:20 p.m.
He's going to speak today. How do you not?
The president is not doing what presidents normally do. We talked about this yesterday. He's not out barnstorming the country, selling his State of the Union. But J.D. Vance, along with Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, are on the Mexican border today. 3:20 Eastern Time press conference there. Eagle Pass.
And they're taking there's a lot of, you talk about the pool on that. The VP, to be honest with you, if you raised your hand tomorrow, anyone on this platform and said, I'll be the pool to the VP in previous administrations, you'd probably get on the plane. They're bringing a pretty good handful of people down today.
100%. It is, as we say, a vice presidency like no others. gets a ton of coverage. And as you said, I remember when I used to cover the Clinton administration, the Gore people would call our booth and beg, just like, could somebody please walk across West Executive Avenue to cover Al Gore's events in the old executive office building? And we'd be like, nah, I got a crossword puzzle to finish. True story. All right. House and Senate are both in. Lots going on in the Hill. Democrats have at least 3 press conferences at different parts of the Democratic Party, House side, reacting to last night. We'll talk about that in a minute. Elon Musk is at some point meeting with House Republicans to talk DOGE. And at 10 o'clock, right when we're going off the air here live, 4 big city mayors, Wu of Boston, Johnston of Colorado, Johnson of Denver, Johnson of Chicago, and Adams of Gotham City are testifying before the House Oversight Committee. Expect there to be fireworks as the contentious discussion of sanctuary city policies is batted across the dais. All right.
Not just that, I the one of the 4 that I would pay attention to is Wu of Boston. Her comments the other day on that individual that was killed or attacked with the machete were despicable. And I have a feeling that some Republican is going to try to make early on a big deal of that.
I agree with that. All right. We could talk about last night. We could show you 100 clips. We could talk about everything. I'll just tell you let me just lay down some basics and then kick it over to you guys. Donald Trump's speech didn't have a lot of news in it. If you really wanted to be micro and take him at his word, you could say he told a significant number of lies. He made a little bit of news, maybe on tariffs, maybe a little bit of news on reconciliation, a few other things, but mostly he just gave an extraordinary performance. And you could hate Donald Trump and still have to acknowledge it was an extraordinary performance, talking for 100 minutes, not boring, high energy, and really used the luxury he had of an opposition which came in saying the focus was going to be on the real lives of real people, and instead engaged in a performance unlike I've ever seen. You don't want to cheer for Donald Trump saying he shut down the border because you think his border policies aren't good. Okay. But it is not human to sit there while that little boy, cancer survivor, is waved into the Secret Service and then hugs the head of the Secret Service. That's not human to sit there. It's just not. And it's not about patriotism. It's not about politics. It's about humanity and judgment. Okay. So first thing I want to show you is Nicole Wallace from last night talking about that little boy in a clip that the right is justifiably inflamed over. Please play number 111.
But I think this was a lesson in finding one thing. That you let yourself feel. And I let myself feel joy about DJ. And I hope he's alive for another, 95 years, right? And I hope he lives and the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then live to see Donald Trump.
And Dan and Sean will comment on them. But that's, for someone I've known for many years, that is ridiculous. All right. Meghan McCain liked the speech quite a bit. And she tweeted a lot of stuff during the night. 109, please. This is one of the things she tweeted. And remember, our friend Meghan, our colleague, is no big fan of Donald Trump. But amongst the things she tweeted, this: inject every single one of these policy proposals directly into my veins, And that leads me to a Politico story, 112. Politico's main story: the media and the Democrats continue to not understand Donald Trump and what his success is about. This is how Politico characterized the speech. It was a red meat speech that appeared more intent on ginning up the president's MAGA base than appealing to the broader coalition of people who came together to elect the president, to say nothing of the more than 75 million people who voted for his opponent. Wrong. Okay. This has been, people have been getting this wrong since 2015. The president's policies last night, almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them, they test 60-40, 70-30, or 80-20 in his favor. They are not red meat for the MAGA base. And they're not just for people who voted for Donald Trump. Many of the things he talked about yesterday are popular with people who would never vote for Donald Trump, but they prefer him on the policies. And that is why the Democrats are flummoxed. And that is why they embarrassed themselves last night and played right into his hands, a man who is so lucky with the identity and competence and incompetence of his opponents. Okay, a couple more things, guys. Insta polls. Okay, most polls in America are going to be a little bit anticlimactic because they just break down on partisan lines. That's why these issues that test 60, 40, 70, 30, or 80, 20 are so significant, because most issues are, if Trump's for it, the Democrats are against it. Here are the two Insta polls done by two news organizations. Donald Trump would say, no great friends of Donald Trump. Very similar. 76% of people in the CBS poll approved of the speech, 69 of CNN. Those are massive numbers. Now, you got to account for the fact that these are polls of people who watch the speech. A lot of people who watch the speech are going to be Trump supporters, but nonetheless, those numbers are somewhat staggering. Finally, here's Chuck Schumer this morning on CNN commenting on Congressman Green's revolt and the general question of how Democrats did last night. Roll 113, please.
You called it nasty. You called it nasty. It was like 4 minutes into the speech when Congressman Al Green was yelling at the podium and he was escorted out. What was going through your head as you heard the congressman yelling?
Well, look, the bottom line is lots of people are frustrated, but the best way to protest what Trump is doing what we are doing and many senators and many congressmen are doing, and that is organizing against these horrible policies of calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme and then slashing
would you
people
rather,
in Social
would you
Security
rather
offices.
that Congressman
So here's
Green,
what we're, John, here's what we're doing.
Would you rather that he not yell?
Here, let me just say, the best answer, in my judgment, is to organize. So I put a call together last week with our activists. I thought 300-400 people would get on the phone. 3,000 people got on the phone. And what we all decided was we're going to focus our energy on the 6 Republican Congress members from New York, because they hold the key to stopping these horrible policies. As you know, in the House, all you need 1 or 2. In the Senate, you need 3 or 4. We don't have Republican senators in New York, but in other states there are. And the best way to organize and protest is to organize. Organizing is hard, but it's effective, and that's what we're doing.
A comment on Nicole, at least that's my gut instinct, but just your general thoughts about where last night leaves us going forward, particularly the Democrats in Congress and the president.
So I've known Nicole a while. She's obviously comms director in the Bush administration and was on the McCain campaign doing the Sarah Palin stuff. So I've known her a while, not best friends, but I'll just leave it at this. It was disappointing that for a group of people that are so sanctimonious about everything that Donald Trump says, to make those comments about a young boy that we should all as Americans be able to applaud. And that's where I think I'll lead with the Democrats. I think Dan's tweet this morning, if you haven't seen it, summarizes what a lot of us thought on both sides of the aisle, which is there were opportunities last night to make it clear. Here's where I don't like Donald Trump. Here's where I don't like his policies. And here's where we can come together. And they missed a huge opportunity to show the American people that line, which is we can be for certain things and we can be, if you're going to wear blue and white colors to support Ukraine, then get up and clap when he talks about peace and he talks about ending a war. If the cancer thing, I mean, there were just issue after issue where I thought you guys look so stupid that your hatred of him is overshadowing the ability to get things done in this country that should be things on a bipartisan base. And for those reasons, as well as several others, I think Donald Trump did a brilliant job, and that's why the Insta polls show what they are. I agree with you; they're flash. They're not scientific. They don't mean anything. But for most people, they sat there and said, "Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that." And he just highlighted their behavior, and that's where they took. You're right. They took the bait. They allowed people to see a contrast that they don't usually get to see, and he called it out by saying, "You know what? The idea that you can't stand for that is pretty telling as to who you are." And over again, they exposed a lot of what's really going on in this country. And I think that was great. I flagged last night equally the Politico headline when Al Green, who was told on multiple occasions to quiet down. And by the way, he was lying. He was getting up there saying, you don't have a mandate to cut Medicare, of which the president is not doing. So that in itself was a lie. Politico says Representative Al Green was ejected from the meeting. No, he wasn't ejected. He was given multiple times to say that he wasn't there, and he was removed for disrespectful and disobedient behavior that was in violation of the House rules. So these guys have so many advantages still. The media does not get this. It is so unbelievable how tone deaf these people in New York, DC, and LA are to what's going on in the rest of the country. But the one thing I did love is that it exposed it in a way that you don't normally get to see, because you don't see people sitting on their hands when a kid gets up who's dealing with this unbelievable disease in such a courageous way, and they don't have the gumption to stand up and clap. That to me was disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I get Democratic anger, right? I get that, Mark, as you said, like, Trump lies, he taunts, he mocks. Like, Democrats were saying last night as that speech went on social media, like, Trump never, ever would say anything positive about Biden in these speeches online, or just everything Biden did was terrible and Trump found a way to hit him. But, like, we just had an election and litigated this. Like, his leadership style, his policies, as you say, his policies are popular. And last night it was almost as if we acted as if he was illegitimate, right? That, like, we are not going to stand and recognize you. We are not going to just acknowledge a single word that you say is good or positive. And as I said last night, like, the country won't hear us if we act like this. I mean, Al Green was an embarrassment. Like, if you're really upset about the entitlement programs, wait till he gets to the entitlement program, then stand up and say, whatever your piece is. But it was like, good evening, everyone. And he just wanted to get up, have a stunt, and, like, get kicked out. And I just thought it was embarrassing to be a Democrat last night. It was a disgrace that they would not show some humanity, for the child, for the man who got into West Point, which is just an amazing accomplishment. We want people to serve.
How about Lake and Riley's thing?
Yeah, well, that one I didn't have high hopes for.
I could go on for
Yeah.
There were 7 or 8 things. So I just think the bottom line is our leadership has no clothes. We need to get our heads screwed back on, and hopefully last night was the bottom of the barrel, and we start the march back up.
There was a clip that went real viral yesterday of Stephen A. Smith on The View going back and forth with Joy Behar. And it was fantastic because Stephen, I think, has done a phenomenal job of encapsulating the problem, right? And people keep saying, why are you at 2 or 3% in the polls? And I love his answer, which is, I know, isn't that ridiculous? How telling is it that a guy like me that's just speaking truth to power, what's really going on, because so many people on the left are desperate for leadership, that a guy like me who's a sports commentator people are going, well, you do it better than the pros. Why don't you do it? But Stephen spoke so eloquently yesterday, saying, like, you guys keep denying what the voters said in November, kind of what Dan's echoing, and you still want to do it, and you don't get it. And Stephen A. Smith said, look, I didn't vote for Trump. I don't like him. I'm not an apologist for him. But at some point, we have to accept reality as to what the country wants. And it's just, last night was the personification of all of that.
Right. Let me say one more thing, and then we're going to move on to Elon. And again, if you want to end the conversation, please raise your hand. Since Bork, we've been in a more polarized country, and 4 of the last 5 presidents have been uniters in their rhetoric. When they ran, they couldn't do it. Trump is the most divisive of all, but he just won. And I try not to dwell on media double standards, but I've heard since the Clinton years, or since the Obama years, I've heard about one South Carolina congressman yelling at "you lie" as a desecration of our democracy. One guy. And last night, there's almost no coverage in the dominant media of what the Democrats did. And imagine, for media double standard, imagine if a Democratic president was celebrating a young boy, cancer survivor, who hugs the head of the Secret Service. Imagine if the Republican members of Congress did not stand up and applaud. Imagine what the coverage of that would be like. I've not seen a single dominant media organization call out the Democrats for not standing up for that boy. And it is a gross double standard, and it is why the Democrats are finding so many alienated people, like in Silicon Valley, who see that double standard and they say that's just not right. Donald Trump gave a very partisan speech last night. It was a campaign rally. He showed no respect for Joe Biden. It was a ridiculous speech by the normal standards. But go look at Joe Biden's speech from last year. That was a political speech too. So has Trump accelerated the partisanship? He has. Did he invent it? No. And last night, the Democrats treated him, as Dan said, like an inauthentic president, as an illegitimate president. And the Democrats are in complete denial about what's actually happening. It was on display last night. Sean.
So
Well,
real
and
quick,
Mark,
I want to just go ahead, Dan. I
was
want to
gonna
just
say,
make a
if that was Kamala Harris, so a black woman, the first woman to be president, up there giving her address to Congress, and Republicans got up and started just screaming at her, holding placards up, like people would be, I mean, they'd be melting down at the disrespect and just the way that you're treating a woman. And like, you have to, as Democrats, step back and say, what the blank are we doing? We've lost our minds. Like,
So-
we set the standard for now for joint sessions or State of the Unions going forward. That is
Yeah.
the new bar to my party that we just did. It's unbelievable.
So last night was as close to Prime Minister's questions as we'll ever get. Number two, I hope that DOGE,
Which I love, by the way.
yeah, I do too. I do love a good Prime Minister's questions. Number two, I think whatever arts and craft program gave the Dems those signs last night should be cut by DOGE. And number three, I think we overlook, sometimes we mention it, but the process of putting a speech together. I was looking back through my notes the other day and some of the pictures I took. The guests, the sequencing, the speech was awesome. And I think that his team, like that is probably the greatest collaboration of a speech that any president gives once a year. You reach out to the departments, everybody gets their 2 cents. I've known Sean Curran for the longest time, since 2015, the new Secret Service director. And when I saw him walking in the chamber last night, it was funny. I literally was on air talking about this, and I said, well, there's Sean Curran, I'm kind of intrigued as to why he's there, because he came in, he's wearing a law enforcement credential, obviously head of the new Secret Service, still an agent, but and they used people in a way to illustrate the effects of policies that no one has seen. I mean, Reagan obviously made this a big deal, but like he took it to new levels last night, and you got to give credit to the staff for how they put that together and how they responded to it and amplified it. It was phenomenal.
I agree. We've never had a television producer as president. He's a great television producer, and television production is about casting above all else, and they cast it beautifully. All right. Dan, what kind of speed bumps is Musk hitting right now?
All right. He's actually hitting a couple. Again, this is why there were so many opportunities from last night that Democrats could be talking about. I think one, the element of surprise that they're kind of launching is starting to bite. Like, more and more Republicans are saying, like, we have no heads up. I'm getting phone calls. We don't know how to respond. We don't even know who to call. I think some of the chaotic and reckless nature of the acts are also just starting to, like, again, common sense is hitting people. Like, this doesn't seem right. And I think, the government is not the private sector. When he did this at Twitter, they could kind of, come down. They lost, business, but they had enough to kind of keep going to try to rebuild. Government provides services day in and day out. Like, members of Congress don't have that luxury of, like, we're going to kind of perform really poorly for, a year or two and then get it right. So I think it's beginning to kind of have a shelf life. And I will be curious to see how the administration quietly deals with this, because they're never going to publicly announce like he's out. But I would imagine changes are coming.
Sean.
So one more prop, and then I'll answer the Musk question. I thought the way that Speaker Johnson, you could tell he was ready to go last night. They had thought through everything, and I actually thought Speaker Johnson handled all of that extremely well, because I think that can be very disconcerting for a guy sitting behind the rostrum, especially sitting behind Donald Trump, figured out how to handle that. So kudos to how Speaker Johnson handled himself last night and was ready to go. On the Musk thing, I disagree. I think that members, by and large, in the movement is so excited about what Elon is doing that he's got so much latitude to affect change. And until the base doesn't like it, which they won't, because which they will forever, because this is such this is like at the core, smaller, more efficient, effective government. Every conservative is on board with that. And I think that what he is doing, how President Trump called it out last night, was so beautiful. And so I think that you're going to see, I think Elon's relishing in it. I think President Trump loves it. They really think they're going to get massive savings out of this. So And Dan, you brought this up a while ago, well, wait till they go after the Department of Defense. They were there yesterday. Like, they're at DOD, man. And so nothing's sacred. And I think that's what's happening right now, and everybody's applauding it.
Well, the only thing though is, Sean, everyone is applauding it publicly on your side because they have to for every reason you just said. But it's my understanding, even from talking to Democrats, talking to Republicans, in private, the temperature is going up a little bit. Sorry.
No, I'm saying you're on the
Oh,
nose.
sorry. I thought you were telling me like stop.
No.
Yeah, that like.
I thought he had something on it.
No. You're
yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
You're-
too
you're-
much coffee or alcohol.
You're headed right to the truth. Keep going.
Yeah, so I do think like that's the rub. Is in private, they're getting more and more frustrated. The polling is kind of, people are in.
We'll hear about that today, though.
What?
When he has that meeting, we'll hear how like, because they'll leak out that it was either really respectful or it got contentious, but we'll find out. I think that's going to
I think they're gonna say the right things because, as you said, the base loves it. But like, if you look at polling, what's really popular is cutting government spending. But then when you get into every other kind of metric of it, it's getting less and less and less popular. And so I just think in private, they're going to try to probably solve this problem and some things will change, but they won't give Democrats that like benefit.
But I look at this very akin to like the BRAC movement, which is we need to reduce the size of but not my military base. And at the end of the day, everyone's on board. You have to posture to protect things in your district. I get that, it's natural, but this is such a great win for the movement that I don't think they have to do certain things as members of Congress they're parochial in protecting their interests. But at the end of the day, I don't see anybody losing because of this.
All right. After Zelensky's pacifying remarks yesterday, he didn't actually apologize, but the press likes to use that word. There's talk now that he and Starmer and Macron may come to Washington together. I'm still skeptical that the Europeans can play a big role here, but
there's no way. Starmer's not that stupid. Neither is Macron.
So, Sean, what do you expect now in terms of sequencing?
Sequencing is what I've said since day one. He will sign the agreement. He will send it back by like WhatsApp or something and say, hey, it's in your inbox. I signed it. I sent some flowers and an edible arrangement. Please say yes. And then but no one is dumb enough to get back in a room again and allow this thing to fall out. They want the stuff that is signed, pretty bows on it. Maybe once it's all done, but I don't think the Europeans, after what they saw, they're not dumb enough to get on a plane and come over until everything is tied up in a bow. So I think you might see some shuttle diplomacy, Keith Kellogg, others going over to Europe or something. But my guess is he read that letter for a reason last night. It's not what the press says, it's what the president thinks. And I think, based on his reaction last night, that President Trump is assuaged by the words that Zelensky used. So that gets it back on track. And then I think the next move in the chess match is to figure out how to get Putin now into the equation and get a deal on the table.
Dan.
I think in honor of Ash Wednesday today, Zelensky has to pay more penance in public. I mean, to Sean's point, he's going to sign the deal. And I think basically Trump can do whatever he wants in terms of like, this is what I need to see for you to grovel in public and kind of humiliate him a little. And I'm just speaking kind of raw politics here. But I do think this will move forward, just as Sean said. But
the overarching thing, though, is that he wants a deal. Trump does not want war and destruction. He understands. I mean, literally, this is the art of the deal. You got him to do what you want. He apologized. At least that's how it's being perceived. You got the letter. You got the deal. Trump's going to take it and go, let's move forward. I mean, because he doesn't want to risk, he wants this to end.
Just got a hilarious text. I'm going to process and figure out how to integrate into the program. If you want to be in the conversation, please raise your electronic hand. Well, as always, we welcome new people. And if you're a Democrat, today may not be the day you want to jump right in. But as always, I see there are Democrats on here. Please raise your hand and be part of the conversation. Jeff, welcome, and tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Oh, you're muted, Jeff.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. I am from St. Louis, and I'm really kind of confused by the whole security guarantee question for Ukraine, because it seems like we've never really made a commitment where we'd go all in order to defend Ukraine. Even with Biden, it was, minimal incursions are okay and such. I know my two senators wouldn't, even with the resources and such, I don't think would want to take on a major commitment like that. And I don't think J.D. Vance supports something like that. So I guess my question is there really a scenario in which the United States would go all in to defend Ukraine? And if not, why are we pretending there is?
Well, there's I don't think, go ahead, Dan.
Look, it was true in the war in Kosovo in the 90s. Like Bill Clinton was never going to send U.S. troops there. How we provide security, I think what the Ukrainians would like is a financial commitment to provide the arms, the intelligence, the drones, like all of the sophisticated weaponry and logistics that go with it. And whether it's some European troops or Ukrainian troops, they just want kind of a, big enough gun, so to speak, to point back at the Russians to say, don't go any further. And I think if only we have that equipment and only we have probably a sufficient amount of money, but the country feels like that money would be better spent at home than abroad. Doesn't mean I agree with that or would like it to happen, but that is where the country is, including a lot of Democrats.
By the way, dirty little secret, if you look at the supply of munitions that we've had, that we've shipped over, we're not able to replenish our own stockpiles right now of certain pieces of munition and weaponry. I mean, it's actually a dirty little secret about where the state of our military is. And that's kind of sad that we've done all this. But the reality, and this is why I said yesterday, bigger than anything else, what I think we're looking at is by having commercial interests and having not civilians on the ground. I think that's where the administration is trying to say to Zelensky and to the Ukrainians, there's no way Putin is going to come after us if we're there. If we're part of this, they know that an attack on you is a commercial attack on us. That's almost as bad as a military attack. And so the Ukrainians, to Dan's point, want a guarantee of money and funding. I think they're getting it, and who knows what else they'll get in the military realm, but I think they're going to get plenty when it comes to making it very clear that our interests are aligned.
Jeff, thank you.
Hello, Dan.
Dan, can you unmute? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Hey. No, I watched the State of the Union address. Oh, not the State of the Union. What did they call it last night?
Joint
It
session
felt like
of
a State
Congress.
of the Union. I mean, I'm very happy with the Dems protesting it. I mean, to me, he's an illegitimate president, and I'm all for it. This is the way the Republicans treated Obama, Biden, Kamala, and I don't get this, like, how the Dems have to act a certain way when the Republicans
just real quick, when you use the word illegitimate, I get you don't like him, but why do you use the word illegitimate?
He stormed the Capitol. To me, he's a traitor. I'm sorry. There's a lot of us that feel that way, Sean.
Dan, I know you do, right? I know you do. And I say this all the time. I have family that feels the same way that you do. But what do you say that he was just elected? Like, with the popular vote? I mean, you may not like it, but what is your answer to that? How should the party handle that more people voted for him? His leadership style, there was nothing new last night, right? We could have rewound it 8 years ago. What do you say?
I say that, you oppose him. The Democrats don't play the Republican game. The Republican game is that they fight us on everything, whether it's right or wrong. And we don't play that game. And that's why, in my opinion, I know you don't feel that way, Dan. I know that you think that we should applaud him when he does something good or whatnot. I don't feel that way. A lot of my friends don't feel that way. We oppose everything about him.
So Dan, okay. On policy, I get it. Okay. So but what do you say to the humanity of some of those? Look, they're political stunts, but they were good political stunts. The boy with cancer, the young man who got into West Point. Do you not think you should acknowledge a kind of lighthearted moment. Like I can't see that Republicans, some of them, Mitch McConnell, even at his like nadir against Obama, I believe, would have stood for a child who got inducted into the Secret Service. Do you agree?
I agree with you on that. But at the same time, like, where was the outrage when Republicans weren't standing up for Sandy Hook parents?
Yep.
There were some of them, and no one, John doesn't call that out. It's always against the Dems, and I'm tired of us losing this fight. That I don't know. I feel like Republicans.
That's a good
Here's the
example.
thing that I think is interesting.
That's
Even if I agreed with you, I think how they did it last night was stupid.
Yeah.
If Al Green wants to, no, hold on. But here's my point. I'm trying to help you. Is if Al Green wants to go and make a spectacle of himself, 4 minutes in before the president has spoken, waving a cane and yelling about some random Medicaid stuff that's false, isn't going to win you anyone over. So my point, beyond disagreeing with you overall, is to say tactically it was really stupid, because no one, even people who probably agree with you about Trump, looked and said, wow, you're making an ass of yourself. And I think that doesn't win you anyone. And I would say the same thing of our folks sometimes when we do stuff. It's what are we doing to grow the party, grow the movement? And last night, what I saw is a bunch of people who drew a contrast that said, I don't know. And this is frankly the issue. So many people on this platform over and over again during the election season said, I was a never Trumper, but they went too far. And last night was further exacerbation of exactly that, just manifested on the House floor.
Okay, but did you say the same thing last time when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert did the same thing and weren't kicked out?
When they did what?
Well, they didn't
did the
keep
same
going.
thing as Al Green.
They said it for like 30 seconds and then they piped out. And
frankly, I'll say it to you now. I don't believe. Actually yesterday I said it. I don't believe stunts on the House floor when the president of the United States are speaking is appropriate. So I said it then. I'll say it again. I don't think that there's a certain level of decorum that's expected.
Okay.
But you speak for
granted.
tens of millions, Dan. Like, I mean, I'm serious. And that's why I wanted to hear what you said. I was excited when Mark called on you. Like, you speak for a lot of Democrats, right? And who feel like Trump has no respect for them. That he is in their face 24/7 with, gratuitous shots, lies, taunts, boasts. I hear you. Like, I totally.
Yeah, and I don't get like how we have to act properly when he doesn't and they don't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just a question of how we do it and where and when we do it, right? I mean, look, there's a reason that 47.5% of the country hates him. Like, there's a reason that they don't like him. So, like, are we trying to harden opposition into us because we're going to go to 11? Like, in my judgment, to Sean's point, the goal is to win elections and rebuild our brand. I don't think we helped ourselves last night.
Dan, I'll one up you. I protect your right to do it. You have a right to say it, a right to do it. But I think tactically you look like morons and you actually hurt your cause. So if your goal is to get people who might disagree with President Trump to support you, doing stuff like that. And as I said, I would argue on my own party, when they do stuff that hurts the brand and the cause, they don't help grow.
Then please do that more on your side, please.
Okay. All right. Very grateful to you for coming. Please come back regularly. Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank
As
you.
Dan said, you speak for tens of millions and we're glad you did. A couple pieces of news. The Freedom Caucus is going to put forward a censure motion against Congressman Green. And Supreme Court ruled, this is an intermediate ruling, so people shouldn't overreact here, but it is potentially tea leaf, 5-4 ruling against President Trump on the question of a lower court ruling saying that the foreign aid cutoff, USAID money, was improper. And what's significant is 5-4, the two who voted with the liberals were Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts. Many people in legal circles have been speculating that Amy Coney Barrett may be, along with Roberts, the fifth vote to overturn some of these DOGE and DOGE-related activities. So it's worth watching her because of how she voted on this particular case, even though, again, this is just a kind of a placeholder ruling.
By the way, Mark, going forward, we've talked about this in the past, and just to reiterate this, for those of us who have fought for so long in the movement, we've been told by our leaders, you can't do this, you can't do that. I know the media is going to report something to the effect of, court over says Trump no. the mere fact that he's fighting is what so many of us have wanted for so long. Like, okay, I'll accept the court ruling. That's how, that's how our government works. But at the end of the day, the one thing that President Trump has done that no other conservative leader for so long has done is actually fought the fight. And it's same thing with the DOGE stuff. I'm just happy that he's doing it, excited that he's willing to take on the fight. And so I know the media is going to look at this as a setback for Trump, but the reality is no one else in decades has been willing to put their name out there and fight for the cause and for the things that we believe in. So
yeah, but you know what though, Sean, you just have to acknowledge the flip side to that, which is there are tens of millions of people who legitimately feel like, and apparently the Supreme Court does to some extent too, that the way he's going about it is
fair enough.
But I mean, you got to call that out, which is how he's doing, saying I have the ability to decide where and when to spend money and what is, even though Congress appropriated it and it's in the law, like there are a lot of people, and we'll see what the court says, that says you just can't do that.
Fair enough. I guess my point though, Dan, is I get it.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Last night when I listened to, we didn't talk about this, when I listened to Alyssa Slotkin,
it was awesome.
She said, if you want to cut waste, I'm right there with you. And I'm going, well, where have you, granted she's new to the Senate, but she was in the House. And I'm like, but where were you? They love to jump on the bandwagon now, but nobody was doing it. And so I welcome everyone that wants to cut waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. But these people who suddenly are saying, I'll stand with you if you want to do it, you were nowhere to be found for decades.
Yeah, nor was the whole Republican Congress, though.
All right, hold on. Chris Simmons from Georgia is here before he speaks. I see here on Twitter, on an account that I trust, that New York Congresswoman Laura Gillen, a Democrat, actually did stand and applaud DJ. I've not seen the video of that, but I'll be curious if she did. There would at least be one. All right, Mr. Simmons, welcome in. Please tell us what is on your mind regarding anything you want.
Well, I wish I had an hour to debate Sean one-on-one. I think we'd have lots of fun. But I just want to make two quick points. Number one, I don't agree with Sean that the disruptions were ill-advised completely, because one of the issues that the Democrats are having is frustration that their leaders aren't standing up enough. And so I think maybe that wouldn't get a Trump voter to shift over, but it might get a passive Democrat to say, they're really fighting him hard. I need to fight hard in my own way too. Secondly, I've done the math, and if in three swing states you could have pulled out 1 out of every 40 Trump voters over to Kamala would be president right now. And I've done that math.
Chris, you can keep doing the math. Trump won.
No. My point, Mark, is that maybe the disruptions are meant to go after that marginal Trump voter that's not really in the bag with him.
Yeah, that's
and when
true.
they point out what he is saying that's not true by holding up the false sign, maybe that convinces somebody. And then
can I address that point though?
Yeah.
Because this goes to Dan too. The problem with that theory is that voter, that middle 5% voter in swing states that Mark documented so well in focus groups and everything, what did they say? I can't stand his character and style and leadership, but I like his policies. And so when we do this on policies that are 70-30, we look insane. That's the problem.
So Dan, that you just helped me lead into my last point.
Sorry.
So they say they like the policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the question the last one I have for both you and Sean. When you add up all the stuff that he said DOGE has found, the savings, when you add up all that stuff, does it come anywhere ever possibly getting to the trillions that they say they're going to say? It doesn't. And so my point is, they needed to say he's lying. And, and DOGE says they saved $8 billion, then it comes out to be 8 million. So they need to point out the lies so that they know that the policies aren't actually doing 100%. What they think it's going to do.
100%. And that's not what they did last. Not what they did last night.
People in the chat who want to say woulda, coulda, shoulda. I just came out with math and facts. What you got?
Thank you, Chris. All right. Let's
keep going. By the way, I just want to say quickly, Mark, I kicked myself. Slotkin, in my opinion, it's a really hard job. It's really hard to come after Trump. I thought she did excellent.
I think it's the best. I think it's the best response I've seen. I can't remember anybody giving. It was really well done. Good length,
Can
good
I, so,
performance.
so the gentleman from Georgia, if this is a debate, I would get 30 seconds
Yeah,
to respond to Chris.
go ahead.
Look, here's the point that I would make to you, Chris. If the argument is, well, we have a $2 trillion annual deficit and he can only find $500 million, then that's pretty. To me, I'm like, great. If he can find 200 million, if he can find $10, like the idea that people are finally looking at the federal budget and looking at it with a sense of respect for the taxpayer is first and foremost what I care about. Secondly, I mean, this is like anything else. It's like, learning a trade, losing weight, wanting to read a book. You didn't read the whole book in one night. You maybe take 5 pages a day or 10 pages a day. I like the idea we're going through this. And if the Dem response is they didn't find 2 trillion in one night or in a month, okay, but we're at least on the right path. And that's where Democrats have got to, if the whole argument is you didn't find it all in one foul swoop, that's a losing argument. So I like the direction we're going. And again, I would go back to what you said. I get the point, the frustration with the Democratic leadership. I understand that even, but I think that my point tactically on Green, that at least do something that like made sense at the right time, that got attention, because what people saw after he was ranting didn't make sense. And so if you're going to organize against him, do something right. I think that, it just fell flat.
Calvin, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
I'm in Sumter, South Carolina. I was on the evening show. I don't have my fellow South Clinton on today, Hogan, but Sean and Dan will suffice. Any appetite for tariff talk this morning?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm in private wealth management, so we do a lot with millions and millions. And I think the one part of tariffs that has not been talked about, and question maybe for Mark, Dan, and Sean, is how much, not with the Mexicans, because the Mexicans always cave first, right, when it comes to the tariffs. I mean, 800 billion plus of their trade is here. So I think that they typically always betray the Canadians. They don't take a united front. How much do you think that the tariffs on Canada are to influence Canadian elections going forward?
A lot. They've revived the party.
No, I'm saying that
Mark,
Trump is trying to influence their
when he asked the
election.
question, how much do they affect, or were they intended to? I think are two different questions.
Intended to, because I think
I don't know why he'd want the liberals to win. So I
right. That's why I'm saying I don't think intended to. They will have an effect. I don't think they're intended to. Wait, there's breaking news on your screen. Turn around right now, Calvin, and tell us what it is.
It's the PMI number for the S&P Global, which was a beat, 51 to 49.
Thank you. Special correspondent.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think that you're going to see some walk back of the tariffs today on both Canada and Mexico, because without getting in the weeds, the president said these were about fentanyl. That was an emergency use of trade dispute mechanisms to get around USMCA and WTO. So once they said the other day that it was actually intended to do other things, they had a problem. I think you're going to see an announcement today that will take both of the tariffs back down. And then, as I said, if you are a trade person, keep an eye on that that April 2nd date. The 301 report that's going to come out is going to be huge and impactful on a lot of markets, India, China, etc.
Well,
Can I push back for 1 second?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that Trump doesn't want the liberals to win, because throughout he has always gotten extractions from Trudeau, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he seems to always have beat him in a trade war.
He wants to discombobulate Canada, and if that means the liberals have a better chance of winning, he'll deal with it. But he doesn't want them to win. I don't believe that's his intention. His intention is to discombobulate.
I think the one thing one of the many things that's sad about our performance last night is on tariffs, like voters increasingly are very skeptical of these, unlike in 17 through 21, where they seemed pretty supportive. My sense is Trump is actually a little nervous. Like I thought one of the surprises was for him to say, like, there's going to be a little bit of pain, maybe, because during the campaign, he definitely said there wouldn't be any campaign pain. And you had several CEOs, Target, others, coming out and saying, like, we will start raising our prices on almost everything very soon if this goes through. Just cold reality. They have to tell their investors. They have a fiduciary duty to disclose kind of material impacts to their operations. And so I thought, it would have been great if we were talking about the fact that these things are a big problem and voters don't like them, but we're not.
Well, the pain part, I think, is because he knows there's going to be disruption in the market and temporary prices, and he's trying to make sure that people get ahead of it. So he's making that clear. He's been saying that for weeks now.
Calvin, thank you.
That's it. Weeks.
Hey, Dan, I never read the chat, but please don't write that in the chat. And I know people in MAGA write worse things than that all the time, but there's just no reason to write something like that in the chat. We're delighted that you got to speak. We're delighted that voices of the left are very welcome on this platform, but please don't write that in the chat. Okay. It just sets a bad example, and it allows the MAGA people to write that about you. And there's just no reason for this platform to become a place where people use profanity and attack each other personally. That's just not what we're trying to do. So I'm singling you out, even though you're far more often attacked than you are the offender, but I just don't want you to head down that path. All right. JJKK. Right.
Hey,
here's Kathy Cage. Here's Mr. Johnson. Kathy, tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, and then Mr. Johnson.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mark. I'm in Central Texas, loosely defined as between Dallas and Austin, in the middle of nowhere. And what's on my mind was I was wanting to respond to the gentleman, and I'm sorry, I had stepped away and I don't know who was saying it, but they were discussing how DOGE's findings were not really significant, or the value were not anything to the budget. And so I just want to give the point of view of somebody from what you would call the heartland. Every time you read a large number, 8 million, 1 million, or to some people, 50,000, that is money that was not put towards the needs of US, or I should say people who are here in the United States. And so when people say, oh, it's just $2 million, people like me say, well, golly, maybe that would have been an emergency FEMA assistance to somebody in North Carolina, California, or pick a place. So that was just what I wanted to say. That's real money to a lot of people.
Yes, ma'am.
I worked on the Beltway. I worked in an environment where billions were tossed around like nothing. So I get that point of view also. I'm not just a rube from Texas, but anyway, that's what I had.
I've never met a rube from Texas. Thank you
That's
for
a great
that.
point.
Well,
say
I'm
again,
not a
you
simple
speak-
girl. How about that?
You speak for tens of millions. Mr. Johnson, unmute and tell us what's on your mind, sir.
Oh, wow. Well, longtime viewer. So happy to be here. Great admirer of the program, and just can't tell you. I'm 68 years old. Since I first voted, I've always voted Democrat. I am so disillusioned with the Democratic Party at the moment, and really feel homeless. I guess I'm part of the independent quadrant, but wow, I have so many stored up comments here. I don't know where to start.
All right. Take your time. Take your time, but not too much time.
Sure. Yeah, I thought, well, actually, my son is a personal friend of Al Green, and I was just horrified by the behavior of the Democrats. I didn't really mind the paddle signs that were a little funny, but I mean, if you just want to say lie because there were lies, I mean, if it was a lie, whatever. But just that really took that behavior up a notch again, and the Democrats were doing it. And yes, maybe the Democrats, I don't know, I just can't see them continuing the way that, say, the Republicans treated Obama, just, blackout, just firewall. It's disgusting to me, and I'm really disappointed. Just as Americans, I don't really care about the party anymore, but just as Americans and us, those are our representatives. I mean, come on, I grew up in Lawton, Oklahoma, which is next door to Fort Sill, which is the military artillery training center for the Army. And so they fire rockets all day long out on the range, and it kind of rumbles the town. During Vietnam, it was like incessant. And so just recently, in the past few years, I still go back there to visit my 98-year-old mom. And it is rumbling night and day again because they're training Ukrainian soldiers out there, and no one really realizes that. I mean, I think it's one reason they have that base out in Southwest Oklahoma is nobody goes there. Nobody knows what's happening there. They've been training a lot of other foreign militaries for a long time since Vietnam. But I'm bringing this up because the money to Ukraine, I just looked this up. If GPT is reliable, to reinforce my understanding that the majority of the funds being given to Ukraine go to like all the soldiers who are training the military, the Ukraine soldiers here, to all the arms manufacturers here, which maybe that money is going to the CEOs of those companies largely now, but it's also providing tons of jobs for Americans.
That's correct. That's correct. Let me cut you off and ask Sean and then Dan to react to what both of you said. And thank you both for coming.
Sure.
Appreciate Jay sharing his comments. Kathy, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that's the whole point of this. Hopefully we can get to a point we get deficit reduction, but the idea that we are blessed to live in a country like this. It costs money to run it, but don't disrespect the money that I send there. And I think that there's finally a sense of that, which is welcome news.
Thank you both again for being part of the show. Come back regularly. Sean, what's on your show tonight?
Well, we mentioned that other South Carolinian. Hogan Gidley was there last night. He's working as an aide to the speaker, as you know, because of his appearances on your show. So he's going to join me today, talk about the inside baseball stuff, because I want to know what the speaker was doing to prepare for this. And then Caroline Downey and Dylan Hoseman from the Daily Caller are going to break it all down.
All right. I'll be back at 6 for two-way tonight. Our sponsor and friend David Bonson will be with us to talk about the latest on tariffs. And then again, in addition to all our regular programming, tomorrow night, David will be doing a special two-way for those of you who'd like to join to talk more in depth about tariffs after two-way tonight on tomorrow night, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and go to twoway.tv/TBG to sign up both for the event and for David's great newsletter, The Dividend Cafe. Tonight, 5 o'clock Eastern time, before two-way tonight, Megan is very fired up about the speech last night. She's very fired up about what the Democrats did last night. You won't want to miss it. Selena Zito, one of the best political reporters in America from the Washington Examiner, will be on with Megan, as well as Jennifer Say, a former professional athlete and a women's athlete, sports advocate. So right on point for some of the stuff that happened last night. So watch Megan tonight, and Sean's show, my show, and the three of us will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Very grateful to everybody who participated. I'll say again to the Democrats, we had a couple on today, 3 really, and I hope you all felt you got a respectful hearing. This program is for everyone. It is not for writing smack in the chat, regardless of who you are. So please understand we're trying to do something different here when we have political programs, and we welcome you to be part of it and urge you to recognize the ethos that's important. Thank you all. I'll see you at 6. Have a good day.